If you're a single woman over 40 looking for Mr. Right and you're ready to learn practical dating strategies that don't waste your precious time, you're in the right place. In this episode, as an intuitive dating coach, I'm sharing part 2 of the best dating advice for women over 40 so you can avoid the pitfalls. Let's get started. Welcome to episode 8. This is part 2 of my best dating advice for women over 40. And last time we talked about the internal preparation that is required to really hone in on who you're looking for and to date with intention and purpose and confidence. And today we're talking about part 2, which is more of the external preparation and what I call the aligned action. So we're going to get into all this. I'm going to explain what is aligned action. So this is where you're doing things that are in harmony with what you truly desire, as opposed to doing the opposite, or i.e., that dreaded word sabotaging or self-sabotaging in dating. We hear that a lot, and I did that for so many years until I figured out that, going in the opposite direction and doing things I don't want to do was not bringing me the love of my life. And it was only when I brought those parts of myself, my heart's desire, my intuition together and allowed those aspects of myself to guide me, was when I went full speed ahead towards what I want and who I want. And I was able to meet my husband in that way, doing that process. So when you're not taking action that leads towards what you want, which is the aligned action, and the reason this is so important is you will burn out in dating. And I've seen this so many times where women I've worked with have started off like burning super bright or putting all their energy into things, but kind of like running on the spot and then ending up saying, this doesn't work. I can't find anyone. There's no good guys out there. No one wants me at my age. All of these things happen. And then the conclusion is like, well, this doesn't work. And therefore all of online dating doesn't work, or dating after 40 doesn't work as a whole. So I think I'll just remain single and, get another cat and just wait for someone to happen or meet them organically. That's what I call kind of the point where women say, I'm going to give up trying and being intentional, which is not a bad thing, but women will become bitter and overly negative and dismiss surefire, proven ways of meeting high-quality guys, and not to mention wasting your precious time and energy. So that's why it's so important to do this in a way that is aligned with what you desire. And if you haven't gone and listened yet, you can go back and listen to the first part around internal preparation, and that's a lot around expectations and intentions. So I want to give you some examples of some problematic actions. So things that, really bring it home and will help you to tune in to see if you are doing anything that is like this in terms of sabotaging, or at the very least going in the opposite direction of what you want and making it hard for yourself. So, for example, you log on to a dating app after a long, frustrating day at work where you felt powerless or defeated, and you're feeling emotionally vulnerable, you're drained, maybe feeling a little bit needy, and sometimes these things are not really obvious. This only comes with, the internal reflection that I do prior to helping women date. So, for example, you're just going on the dating app, you haven't done any reflective work, you've had a really bad day, and you start messaging with guys, and you become increasingly triggered and upset with the way they're talking to you or not talking to you. And by no means am I saying, dismissing or downplaying the fact there are obviously guys on the apps who are disrespectful, who deserve none of your time, none of your energy. But sometimes we can become very overly triggered on something. So someone will say something and it's like, look, I told you all guys are like this, and look what he's doing. He's being super disrespectful. Or look at how many questions he's asking. How dare he ask me all these questions? And you get just really fired up in a way that feels disempowering. It feels defeated. You start, spinning out emotionally and mentally and spiraling. So that's an example of a very problematic action and something that would not be aligned. Second example, you go on dates with guys who represent your deal breakers, just in case, or to fill the time until you meet the right guy. And the thinking behind this is I don't have any choice because he's the one who's been responding to me. So the guy who's sort of, ick on some levels is responding to you. And so you're like, well, I better go on this date just in case. You never know. Maybe there's some, interesting way all of a sudden we'll be in love with each other. And, for example, some of the deal breakers that you could be dismissing when you're doing this, when you're making these problematic actions, would be he's at an age that is far younger than you or far older than you. So he's totally out of the range that you're comfortable with. And I'm not talking, 1 or 2 years here and there on either side. That's no big deal. I'm talking if you're, if your cap is 65 years old and the guy's like 80 years old, or you're in your 40s and some guy is like 28 years old, you've pretty much, if you've made that as a deal breaker, I'm not saying, someone who's like, I really want to be with a younger guy, or I want to be with an older man who's mature, that's fine. But if you've already told yourself, I don't want to be with a guy who's 10 years older than me or 10 years younger than me. And lo and behold, here's a guy who's, totally out of your range. And you're like, well, I'll just go on a date with him anyway, just in case. And another thing I see a lot is the deal breakers is he lives out of town. So he lives far away, or even in another area altogether. That's like, you need to take a plane to get to him. And he happens to be in town and he's like, why don't we just meet up? So that's a deal breaker. You want someone who's close to you. You need it to be practical. You need to be able to see each other. And you go on the date anyway. So that's a problematic action. Or another example that I see quite often is just very far apart in terms of lifestyle or values or something that's really important to you. For example, the guy eats McDonald's every day and you're a very health conscious person. That's going to be a deal breaker. And, someone who's doing this and going on a, problematic date is doing exactly the opposite of what they want. That's what you really have to get your head around, is that you're doing something that is wasting your time and energy. And the reasons that you're doing it that may seem, somewhat logical on the surface, like, well, I'm just going to see, I'm just staying open just in case, you never know type of thing, is actually usually hiding a lot of insecurities or a lot of feelings around not having many choices, or it being, slim pickings out there. So that's why you want to spend time doing those reflective type of things that I really, really advocate for. And you can get examples of that in the previous episode on the worst dating advice, part 1, where I talk about the internal preparation. And I'm not saying that I didn't do this. I have plenty of examples. And so I'm not innocent in any of this by any means. And I want to, just put it out there that I'm not judging anyone who's doing this, because it does happen and you can get into these patterns. And that's why I'm out here trying to help you to stop you from wasting that time and energy. I went out with older guys that I didn't really want to be with older guys. I went out with way younger guys that I knew there was no potential there. There was no long-term lasting love potential. And I did it anyway because of that fear and insecurity, the self-doubt, and that scarcity kind of mindset. That's really what all of those things are, like the perfect storm that, make you do these type of things. And that's what I want you to think about. All right, so let's look at some examples of some aligned actions. Okay, So you log on to a dating app after you've eaten dinner, you've relaxed, you've tuned into your body, maybe doing a 10-minute journaling exercise to see what your intentions and desires are for today, or just in general to get back in touch with them. And then you go on the dating app with your intentions. So the amount of time you want to spend on there. I always say give yourself a time limit and even use something as like a timer, because you want to kind of get in and get out and be very purposeful with it, while at the same time remaining open to what you are intending, open to what you want, open to moving towards what you want. Okay, so that's an example of a very aligned action, is getting prepared, ready, get your body ready, get your mind right, get everything lined up, and then you log on to the dating apps and you're remaining open and hopeful and excited for the future and excited for what, that this dating app is going to bring to you that evening. That's a beautiful example of an aligned action. Second example would be, of course, you go on dates only with guys who are a match to you, meaning they don't have any deal breakers that you know of. I will give a caveat. Sometimes you find out things afterwards that people are not really telling you, or for whatever reason, you didn't find out till you're on the date. And that's perfectly fine, because that's why you're on the date. You want to get to know someone. And there is a certain level of getting to know someone that involves finding out things and being disappointed and saying, well, that's too bad. That's one of my deal breakers. It's really nice to meet you, but I'm going to continue searching. You don't have to be as sort of like cutting it off that quickly. But you want to bear in mind that you're not going to spend a lot of time with someone who has all these deal breakers. There's really, the other thing that's just coming up now in my mind is women will be like, well, I just want to be open to creating connections as a whole. And maybe they're going to be my friend, or, this is going to be a valuable connection and maybe I'll learn something. All of those things are very admirable. But as I said, we only have a certain amount of energy, a certain amount of intention and purpose and emotional bandwidth to put towards dating in general. It's hard enough with all the stressful things you're going through and the other things you're navigating through life. And to add, it's kind of like an energy lake, because you're adding another thing to the pile to say, well, I'm getting intentional about dating. I've got this certain amount of energy, but I'm just going to open myself up to this general experience. Well, even though he's, 10 years older, or he lives in another city or another country, I'm going to be open because I want to connect with someone. That's going to drain your energy very quickly, especially if you do that on a regular basis. So I say keep your boundaries super tight. You can always go to, outside of this dating thing and whatever your intentions are around finding love. If you feel like you have the capacity for it, you can go to events, you can volunteer at certain places to meet people, to expand your social network in general. All of those things are beautiful ways to expand your life, but do it outside of the dating realm. Keep your dating boundaries super tight. Okay, so those are examples of aligned actions. And I want you to think about when you go on dates with, someone without the deal breakers, you're only going to zone in on and hone in on the guys who don't have the obvious, glaringly obvious deal breakers. And you also want to have a minimum standard of what you want that you can see potential for. So you have to have an idea of what's your minimum standard of that person, of someone you're looking for. And it could be different for everyone. It could be that they have to have a certain amount of inner work that they've done, or that they've traveled, or that they're open-minded in a certain way. And that's just your bare minimum standards. And if you're not aware of that, I would highly suggest doing the Detox Unavailable Guys Challenge that I have on my website that's totally free. If you don't have a solid awareness of who your Mr. Right is and who your Mr. Unavailable is. It's a very eye-opening exercise, and it's just really helpful. Okay, so let's look at, we've got our aligned actions, our problematic type of actions. So now you know what we're talking about on either side. And now some other specific actions that you can take that are very practical and very intentional and help you to just conserve your energy in this space and help to set up a really great experience. So some examples would be to set up a schedule for yourself for the week or for the month. For example, between, 7 and 8 every night or every second night or every week, whatever it is your dating app time or your online dating time or your time to research what are the social events going on, the singles events that are in your city, or spending that time talking to friends and family and saying, this is what I'm looking for. So basically using that time to find love. You're intentionally finding love. So you've got your schedule. You can look at it and you can say, tonight at 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock, I'm going to log into this dating app and I'm going to spend this amount of time on there, and put away all your distractions and be fully present. And again, do the preparation beforehand where you tune into your body, check in on your intentions, all that sort of stuff. And as I'm describing it, it sounds like it's like a lot of work, but it literally takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes to prepare. And once you have a schedule, you're just going to look at your schedule and be like, oh, tonight's my dating app time. And really focus on that and give yourself that time. Then you can also do another preparation thing by repeating your intentions. So if you've written out your intentions and you did some of the exercises from the last podcast in Worst Dating Advice Part 1, you'll have your intentions written out so you can look at them, read them out loud, really get into the energy of it, get excited about it. It's your time to shine. You're like, yay, I'm ready. I'm excited for this dating app time. This time for myself. You really have to think of it that way. You are spending time and putting time into, in a really aligned way, putting time into finding what you want and creating the kind of life that you dream of. So it's a beautiful, worthwhile thing to do, to put this energy and sort of preparation into it. And then when your time is up, I want you to celebrate. Pat yourself on the back for showing up and being available. And this is outside of any kind of outcome or so-called results, in quote. It's like, well, I spent this time, I showed up and I did my best and I was open. And I feel really good about it. And I'm going to do it again next week. Or I'm going to do it again in a couple of days. And I can't wait because this is so great for me. And it's, tapping into all of these amazing things about myself. And I'm showing up in a way that I'm surprised and delighted to see how I can actually show up. So celebrating yourself is a really important final step. Now I want to talk about the mind, body, spirit aspect of this preparation, the external preparation. So this is a little bit of internal work, but it's still based on making aligned actions. So looking at mindset, we always want to go back to what I said about bare minimum standards for lasting love. So what is the bare minimum? Here's some examples. A balanced emotional and mental state of the other person. And of course, again, you can't know this right away, but you can get a fairly good idea. And usually we're way more intuitive than we give ourselves credit for. So can the person, do they have potential? That's one way you can look at it. Like, do they have potential to contribute to a healthy and loving relationship with me? And you can look at, how do they communicate? How do they show up? Are they open? Are they easy to talk to? These are all ways that you can check in around that. Another bare minimum standard for a lasting love relationship, the person has to be capable, able, and willing to be loved and loving. And of course, we can't tell this right away, but we do have some ways to find out. So my episodes on red flags, you can always tune in around that. Green flags, these are some ways that we can decipher, is a person able and willing to be in a loving relationship, to be loved, to accept compliments and all of these little hints that can come up in the first few dates. And then the last part around a bare minimum standard, the person would have to be willing, able, and capable of contributing to the relationship in a meaningful and mutually supportive manner in any way. So basically financially and or emotionally, intellectually, are they present? Are they actively responding and engaging with you? Are they available? These are all things that you can ask yourself, the 1, 2, 3. Are they meeting these 3 bare minimum standards for lasting love? If not, or if they have these deal breakers, then they are not worth your time. And this is another thing that comes up, is we feel bad. As women, we're like, I feel bad. I feel guilty. I should give him another chance. He's trying really hard, even though all of these red flags are coming up, or this guy doesn't fit what I want at all, or even a little bit, but I feel bad. So you really want to dive into that piece and say, well, how bad do I feel for myself to put me through this, to date guys who are not even my bare minimum standard, that are not going to take me in the direction of love, that are going to essentially waste my time and energy. And I don't have time for this because, especially after 40, it's like you have less tolerance and less ability to expend your energy and essentially have it leaking out all over the place. So you want to ask yourself that question. If you feel bad for them, don't you feel bad for yourself in putting yourself in that position? And I don't want you to beat yourself up. I just want you to be aware. Why aren't you considering yourself in this equation? All right, so the last tip I'm going to talk about is you're strengthening your intuition for finding love. This is my pro tip that, again, a lot of women come up against. They ask me, what is the difference between a feeling, a fear, and intuition? So in terms of dating, it comes up like, well, how do I know if I'm just afraid of commitment, or I'm getting closer to an amazing relationship, or this guy ticks all the boxes, all the green flags are flying, and I immediately want to go in the other direction. I want to run away. And what's the difference between that fear and my intuition telling me, no, this isn't right, and having a very strong feeling? So let's break this down. The fear will come up and always really makes itself known by obsessive thoughts and negative judgments, and sometimes some doomsday kind of ideas. So for example, you'll have like the same thoughts running around in your head, oh, what if this guy is really nice, but then he turns out to be cheating on me, or he's married, or I start to love him and then he moves away. And it's just this circle of obsessive thoughts that just drives you crazy and puts you into this like mental spiral. That is for sure a fear. A feeling is something you experience in the body, and it's connected to thoughts. And it could also go around in a circle between thoughts and the body and create symptoms. For example, a tension headache, stomach ache, a clenching stomach, rapid heartbeat, or sweating. So if you have an intensely negative type of experience in your body, that is a feeling and somewhat of a signal that you're in territory that's maybe not the best for you, and or you're being reminded of something from your past. And you could also have the opposite of that. You could have a very wonderful experience in your body where you're heart opens up, your body feels relaxed around this person. You're like, well, I want to spend more time with them, but you feel very grounded and relaxed. That's also a feeling that shows up in the body. Your intuition is a very subtle whisper, an idea, a notion, a nudge with a very expansive, light feeling. There's really no thoughts around it. There's a feeling of calmness. It's almost like matter of fact because it's a sense of knowing. You feel confident. It's like this confident knowledge without any evidence as to why. Those are all signals that your intuition is at play. And so when you break those three down and, for example, go on a date and you're having these obsessive thoughts about the person and you're feeling really anxious and tight and closed off and feel, judging yourself, judging the other person, feeling like, well, this is just going to go nowhere. This is going to go down the toilet and all of these things. That's a fear that you need to examine outside of the date. I wouldn't make any decisions about the date while you're experiencing this and when you're in the date. The feeling in the body, if you're on a date and you got that rapid heartbeat, sweating, you feel that anxiety, stomach clenching, you definitely want to explore what that feeling is about. Again, outside of the date, outside of the person, away from them, and examining, what is this feeling I'm having? Where is it in my body? What do I feel like it's representing? And do some internal investigating around that. But on the other hand, if you're on the date and you're just all of a sudden get this beautiful sort of subtle idea, or what I call a download, something just drops into your body or into your mind, and you're like, it would be wonderful to go on a picnic with this guy. I would love to do that. And all of a sudden you just get this feeling like, yeah, if I went on a picnic, this would be amazing. So that's your intuition. Or saying, I should tell him about the time I went to XYZ place. That feels really good. So that's your intuition. On the other hand, if you get an intuitive, subtle notion that drops into your head that says, I think I better keep looking. That's also your intuition with no judgment, no fear, no big body reactions, just an inner knowing. So that hopefully gives you a better idea of how you can break those things down. And of course, it's a work in progress. It's about you figuring out your own intuition, your feelings, your body, what your fears are, and investigating and doing reflective exercises around that. So I hope this was helpful in getting you to take aligned actions to meet Mr. Right and to move in the direction of what you truly desire. And next week, we're going to move more into this around dating anxiety, dating fears, and all of those things and what to do about it. So don't miss next episode. And remember that love is closer than you think.